I never thought a string of ones and zeros could destroy my life. But here I am, watching my world crumble through the cold glow of a computer screen. It started like any other Monday morning. I rolled out of bed, fumbling for my phone to silence the alarm. Half awake, I opened Instagram out of habit, ready to scroll through my feed while I waited for my coffee to brew. But instead of the familiar layout, I was greeted with an error message. Sorry, there was a problem with your login. Weird, I thought. I must have mistyped my password. I tried again, double-checking each character. Same result. Frowning, I opened Facebook instead, only to find I was logged out there too. Twitter, same story. A knot began to form in my stomach as I realized I couldn't access any of my accounts. I sat down at my laptop, trying to push away the growing sense of unease. I'm in IT, for crying out loud. This is probably just some glitch. I'll have it sorted in no time. But as I attempted to log in through my browser, my heart sank. Account locked due to suspicious activity. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I tried to regain access. With each failed attempt, the knot in my stomach tightened. This wasn't a glitch. Someone had deliberately locked me out of my own accounts. And then it hit me. Alex, my ex-boyfriend. The one I'd broken up with just 2 weeks ago. He'd always been tech-savvy, often bragging about his hacking skills. I'd found it impressive once. Now, the thought made me sick. I grabbed my phone, pulling up his contact. My thumb hovered over the call button for a moment before I thought better of it. If he was behind this, confronting him directly might only make things worse. Instead, I opened my email, praying it hadn't been compromised too. Relief washed over me as I logged in successfully. At least I had one line of communication left. But my relief was short-lived. My inbox was flooded with notifications from my social media accounts. New posts, comments, friend requests accepted. My blood ran cold as I opened the first email. Your status update. Time to come clean. I've been living a lie, and you all deserve to know the truth about me. I didn't post that. With shaking hands, I opened email after email, my horror growing with each one. Whoever had control of my accounts was airing out every piece of dirty laundry I had, real or imagined. They posted about mistakes I'd made years ago, secrets I'd kept, even lies about things I'd never done. I felt like I was going to be sick. Years of carefully curated online presence, my professional image, my relationships with friends and family, all of it was being systematically destroyed. I tried to report the accounts as hacked, but without access, there was little I could do. I sent frantic emails to the support teams, but I knew from experience how long those could take to get a response. Time I didn't have. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Lily. Emma, what the hell? Are you okay? What's going on with your Facebook? I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Lily, of course. She works in cybersecurity. If anyone can help me, it's her. I called her immediately, the words tumbling out in a panicked rush. Lily, thank God. I've been hacked. All my accounts. I'm locked out of everything. It's Alex. It has to be. He's posting all this stuff, Lily. Secrets, lies. I don't know what to do. Whoa, slow down. Lily's calm voice was like a lifeline. Start from the beginning. Tell me exactly what happened. As I recounted the morning's events, I could hear Lily's fingers flying across her keyboard. Okay, she said when I finished. I'm looking at your accounts now. Whoever did this is good, but they've left some traces. I'm going to try to track their IP address. While Lily worked her magic, I paced my apartment, checking my email obsessively. With each new notification, I felt another piece of my life slipping away. Posts about fictitious affairs, fabricated confessions of wrongdoing at work, even private photos I thought I'd deleted long ago. My phone was blowing up with messages from confused and concerned friends. Worse were the ones from people believing what they were seeing. Accusations, expressions of disappointment, even a message from my boss asking me to come in for an urgent meeting. I felt like I was drowning, helpless as I watched my carefully constructed life be torn apart bit by bit. How could Alex do this to me? Sure, our breakup hadn't been amicable, but this level of vindictiveness? I never thought he'd stoop so low. After what felt like hours, but was probably only about 45 minutes, Lily called back. Emma, I've got something. The IP address traces back to a coffee shop about a mile from your place. The one near the park, you know it. I knew it all too well. It was where Alex and I had our first date. The irony wasn't lost on me. Thanks, Lily. You're a lifesaver. Can you keep trying to regain control of my accounts? Of course. But Emma, be careful. Maybe you should let the police handle this. I appreciate her concern, but the thought of waiting for the slow wheels of justice to turn while my life fell apart was unbearable. I'll be fine. I just need to confront him, make him stop. I grabbed my keys and rushed out the door, adrenaline pushing away the fear and exhaustion. The drive to the coffee shop was a blur. My mind raced with all the things I wanted to say to Alex, veering between rage and pleading. As I burst through the door of the cafe, my eyes scanned the room frantically, and there he was, hunched over a laptop in the corner, a smug smile on his face as his fingers danced across the keyboard. I marched over, my hands shaking with anger. Alex, what the hell do you think you're doing? He looked up, feigning surprise. Emma, what a pleasant surprise. Come to thank me for showing the world who you really are. Thank you? You're destroying my life. How could you do this? Alex's eyes hardened. How could I? How could you throw away 3 years like they meant nothing? You humiliated me, Emma. Now it's your turn. I felt the eyes of the other patrons on us, but I didn't care. I didn't throw anything away, Alex. The relationship wasn't working, and you know it. But this is insane. You need to stop now. He leaned back, crossing his arms. Or what? You'll call the cops? Go ahead. I've covered my tracks. They'll never prove it was me. The smug certainty in his voice made something snap inside me. Before I knew what I was doing, I grabbed his laptop. Hey! Alex stood up, reaching for the computer, but I was faster. I turned and ran out of the cafe, clutching the laptop to my chest. I could hear Alex shouting behind me as I sprinted down the street. My car was just a block away. If I could make it there, I'd have evidence of what he'd done. My lungs were burning as I reached my car, fumbling with the keys. Just as I got the door open, a hand grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around. Give me the laptop, Emma, Alex growled, his face contorted with rage. No! I gasped, still trying to catch my breath. It's over, Alex. I have proof now. You've lost. For a moment, I thought he might hit me, but then something changed in his eyes. The anger drained away, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. You don't understand, he said, his voice suddenly quiet. I had to do it. You were going to leave me behind. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't lose you. I stared at him, disbelief and pity warring inside me. This person in front of me, this desperate, broken man, was a stranger. What had happened to the Alex I thought I knew? You've already lost me, I said softly. You lost me the moment you decided to do this. Please, Alex, just let it go. For a long moment he didn't move. Then slowly he stepped back, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I got into my car, placing the laptop carefully on the passenger seat. As I drove away, I could see Alex in my rearview mirror, a lonely figure growing smaller with distance. The next few days were a whirlwind of damage control. With the evidence from Alex's laptop, I was able to regain control of my accounts and press charges. Explaining the situation to friends, family, and co-workers was humiliating, but most were understanding once they knew the truth. As I sat in my apartment a week later, scrolling through my newly secured social media, I couldn't help but reflect on how quickly things had spiraled out of control. My online presence, which I'd always seen as an extension of myself, had become a weapon in the hands of someone I once trusted. I thought about Alex, about the desperation that must have driven him to such extremes. Part of me was still angry, but mostly I felt a profound sadness. In trying to hold on to me, he'd lost himself. As I closed my laptop, I made a silent promise to myself. I would be more careful with my online presence. Yes, but more importantly, I would be more careful with my heart. Because in the end, the greatest hack isn't of our accounts, but of our trust. And rebuilding that firewall is the hardest task of all. I always thought the phrase, "a picture is worth 1,000 words," was just a cliche. That is, until the day I found an envelope stuffed with 1,000 unspoken threats, each captured in the cold click of a camera shutter. It started on a Tuesday. Nothing special about that day. Just another forgettable weekday in a string of them since my breakup with Mark 6 months ago. I remember thinking how nice it was that the mail carrier had pushed the envelope all the way into my mailbox instead of leaving it hanging out like usual. It wasn't until I pulled it out that I realized why. It was unmarked, unaddressed, just a plain manila envelope. Curious, I opened it as I walked back to my front door. Inside were photos, dozens of them. At first, I smiled, thinking maybe my mom had sent me some old family pictures she'd found. But as I flipped through them, my smile faded, replaced by a growing sense of unease. These weren't old photos. They were of me, recent ones. There I was, getting coffee at my favorite cafe downtown. Another showed me jogging in the park near my house. In one, I was leaving work, my bag slung over my shoulder as I headed for my car. My hands started to shake as I flipped through more images. Me grocery shopping, me having dinner with friends, me checking the mail. Yesterday, I dropped the envelope, photos scattering across my front porch. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Someone had been following me, watching me, photographing my every move, and they wanted me to know it. I scooped up the photos with trembling hands and hurried inside, locking the door behind me. I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath, my mind racing. Who would do this? Why? And then, like a punch to the gut, I knew. Mark. Our relationship had ended badly. He hadn't taken it well when I told him I needed space, that things were moving too fast. He'd begged, pleaded, then gotten angry. The last time I saw him, he'd yelled that I'd regret leaving him, that I'd see how much I needed him. I'd brushed it off as the empty threats of a hurt man. Now, looking at the stack of photos in my hands, I wasn't so sure. I spent the rest of the evening poring over the pictures, trying to remember where I'd been when each was taken. Had I noticed anyone following me? Had I seen Mark lurking in the background? But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't recall anything out of the ordinary. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house settling, every car passing outside had me jolting awake, certain that Mark was there, watching, waiting. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't bear the thought of going outside, of being watched and not knowing it. Instead, I spent the day checking and rechecking the locks, peeking through the blinds at every sound. By afternoon, I convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe it wasn't Mark. Maybe it was just some random creep who'd give up if ignored. I decided to go about my routine as usual. I wouldn't let fear rule my life. That resolve lasted until I checked the mail the next day. Another envelope. More photos. This time, they were closer. Me in my living room, reading a book. Me in my kitchen, cooking dinner. Me asleep in my bed. I felt violated, exposed. The idea that someone, Mark or anyone, had been that close, had seen me in such private moments, made me feel dirty. I wanted to scrub my skin raw, to somehow erase the touch of those unwanted eyes. I called the police. They were sympathetic, but not particularly helpful. Without proof of who was sending the photos, or any direct threats, there wasn't much they could do. They suggested I install security cameras, keep a record of any further incidents, and to call them if I ever felt in immediate danger. I felt utterly alone. I couldn't tell my parents. They'd only worry themselves sick. My friends would just tell me to move, as if uprooting my entire life was a simple solution. So I suffered in silence, jumping at shadows, always looking over my shoulder. For a week, no more photos came. I started to relax, to think maybe it had been a sick joke that had run its course. I went back to work, started going out again, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I found myself studying every face on the street, every car that passed me, looking for Mark or anyone suspicious. Then, just as I was starting to feel normal again, another envelope arrived. This time, there was a note with the photos. "You look so beautiful when you smile. I miss your smile." It was Mark's handwriting. That was the final straw. I couldn't live like this anymore, constantly looking over my shoulder, afraid in my own home. I decided to confront him. I knew it was risky, possibly stupid, but I was desperate for this to end. I drove to his apartment, rehearsing what I'd say. I'd be firm, tell him to stop or I'd get a restraining order. I'd make him understand that this behavior was not okay, that it wouldn't win me back. As I parked outside his building, I saw him leaving, camera in hand. My heart raced. This was it. I'd caught him in the act. I got out of my car, ready to confront him, but he didn't seem to notice me. He walked purposely down the street, and on an impulse, I followed him. For blocks, I trailed behind, ducking behind cars and into doorways whenever he looked back. It felt surreal, like I was the stalker now, but I needed to know where he was going, what he was doing. Finally, he turned into a park. I hesitated at the entrance, suddenly unsure. What was I doing? This was crazy. I should just go to the police, show them the note, get that restraining order. But then I heard the click of a camera shutter. I crept forward, peering around a tree, and there was Mark, camera raised, taking pictures, but not of me. He was photographing a young woman jogging along the path. As I watched, stunned, he followed her, snapping photo after photo. She was oblivious, headphones in, focused on her run. I felt sick. This wasn't about me. It never had been. Mark was sick, dangerous in a way I hadn't imagined. And that woman, she had no idea she was in danger. Without thinking, I stepped out from behind the tree. "Hey!" I shouted. Both Mark and the jogger turned to look at me. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Mark's eyes widened with recognition, and he turned to run. "Stop him!" I yelled to the jogger. "He's been stalking you." To her credit, she reacted quickly. As Mark tried to run past her, she stuck out her foot, tripping him. He went down hard, the camera flying from his hands and smashing on the pavement. I ran over as the jogger pinned Mark down. He was crying, begging us to let him go, saying he hadn't meant any harm. But looking into his eyes, I saw no trace of the man I'd once cared for. This was a stranger, a predator. The police arrived quickly. As they cuffed Mark and led him away, I gave my statement, handed over the photos and note he'd sent me. The jogger, Sarah, I learned, hugged me, thanking me for the warning. We exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch through the legal proceedings we knew would follow. As I watched the police car drive away with Mark in the back, I felt a mix of emotions. Relief, certainly. The nightmare was over, but also sadness for the man Mark had become, and guilt that I hadn't recognized the signs earlier. Most of all, though, I felt a renewed appreciation for the ordinary moments of life. The coffee runs, the jogs in the park, the quiet evenings at home. Moments I'd taken for granted until I saw them through the lens of a stalker's camera. In the weeks that followed, as I worked with a therapist to process what had happened, I found myself taking my own photos, not of people, but of moments. The steam rising from my morning coffee, the way the light hit the leaves in the park, my own smile in the mirror, These photos weren't about surveillance or control. They were about reclaiming my life, my experiences. Each one was a reminder that I was more than a victim, more than the subject of someone else's obsession. I was the author of my own story, the director of my own life, and no one, not Mark, not anyone, could take that away from me. As I pinned these new photos to my wall, replacing the painful memories with moments of joy and peace, I realized something. A picture may be worth 1,000 words, but the story those words tell, that's up to us. I never thought I'd be afraid of my own medicine, but when you realize the pills meant to heal you might be killing you instead, suddenly that little orange bottle becomes the most terrifying thing in your world. It started with the headaches. They'd always been bad but manageable. A dull throb that would build throughout the day, peaking in the evening when I was trying to unwind. My doctor had prescribed me some pretty strong stuff, not the over-the-counter kind you can pick up at any pharmacy, but the good stuff, the kind that comes with warnings about operating heavy machinery. At first, they worked like a charm. One pill and within an hour, the pain would melt away, leaving me feeling almost euphoric in its absence. But over time, something changed. The headaches started coming back stronger, more frequently. I found myself reaching for the bottle more often, sometimes taking 2 pills instead of 1, desperate for relief. I remember the day it all came to a head. It was a Tuesday, I think. The pain had been building all day, a jackhammer behind my eyes that made it hard to focus on anything. By the time I got home from work, I was in agony. I stumbled to the bathroom, fumbling with the childproof cap on the pill bottle. As I tipped 2 pills into my palm, something fell off. They looked different somehow. The shape was slightly wrong, the color a shade too dark. I blinked hard, wondering if it was just the pain messing with my vision. But no, there was definitely something not right about these pills. I set them on the counter, then emptied the rest of the bottle. Most looked normal, but mixed in were these slightly off pills. A chill ran down my spine as I realized what this might mean. My ex, Karen, flashed into my mind. She'd moved out 3 months ago, but she still had a key. I'd been meaning to change the locks, but hadn't gotten around to it. Could she have? No! That was crazy. Karen could be spiteful, sure, but tampering with medication? That was crossing a line I didn't think even she would cross. But as I stood there, staring at the mix of pills on my bathroom counter, doubt crept in. Karen had been furious when I ended things. She'd screamed, cried, threatened. "You will regret this," she'd said as she stormed out that last time. I'd brushed it off as the melodramatic ranting of a hurt ex. Now, I wasn't so sure. I thought back over the past few weeks. The worsening headaches, the increased fatigue, the dizzy spells I'd been experiencing. At the time, I'd chalked it up to stress, to not sleeping well. But what if? My hands shook as I scooped the pills back into the bottle. I needed to get these tested, to know for sure what I'd been putting into my body. But more than that, I needed answers. I called my best friend Mike. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice cheerful. "Hey man, what's up?" "Mike," I said, my voice tight with pain and fear. "I need your help. Can you come over?" Something in my tone must have alerted him, because his voice immediately turned serious. "I'm on my way." "You okay? Just hurry." I managed before hanging up. While I waited for Mike, I paced my apartment, the bottle of pills clutched in my hand like a talisman. Every creak of the building, every sound from the street outside had me jumping, half expecting to see Karen bursting in to finish whatever she'd started. When Mike arrived, I practically dragged him inside, quickly locking the door behind him. His eyes widened as he took in my disheveled appearance and wild eyes. "John, what's going on? You look like hell." I thrust the pill bottle at him. "I think Karen's been tampering with my medication." Mike's eyebrows shot up. "Whoa, that's a pretty serious accusation. What makes you think that?" As I explained about the different-looking pills and my worsening symptoms, Mike's expression grew more and more concerned. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Okay," he said finally, "here's what we're going to do. First, we're taking these to get tested. I know a guy who works in a lab. He owes me a favor. Then, we're changing your locks. Tonight." I nodded, relief washing over me at having someone else take charge. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm just being paranoid? Mike put a hand on my shoulder. Then we'll deal with that. But right now, better safe than sorry. The next few days were a blur. Mike's friend at the lab agreed to rush the tests, but it still felt like an eternity waiting for the results. In the meantime, we changed the locks, and Mike insisted on staying with me. I was grateful for his presence, even if I felt a bit foolish for needing it. I didn't take any more of the pills, which meant enduring the headaches. They were brutal, but the fear of what might be in those pills was worse than any physical pain. Finally, after 3 days that felt like 3 years, we got the call from the lab. Mike answered, putting it on speaker. "So, we've analyzed the pills." The lab tech's voice crackled through the phone. "Most of them are exactly what they're supposed to be, but a few, well, they're not." My heart sank. "What are they?" There was a pause. "It's a mix. Some are just sugar pills, placebos, but others, they contain high doses of caffeine and a few other stimulants. Nothing illegal, but definitely not what should be in your prescription. Taken together, especially with your actual medication, they could cause some nasty side effects. Increased headaches, dizziness, heart palpitations." I felt sick. It was true. Karen had been poisoning me, slowly but surely. Mike thanked the tech and hung up. He turned to me, his face grim. "What do you want to do?" I took a deep breath. Part of me wanted to confront Karen, to demand answers, to unleash all the anger and fear I'd been feeling. But another part, a smarter part, knew that wasn't the answer. "We go to the police," I said. "We've got evidence now. This isn't just a bad breakup anymore. It's attempted murder." Mike nodded, already reaching for his phone to call the police. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of police statements, lawyer meetings, and doctor appointments. Karen was arrested, and as the investigation unfolded, a terrifying picture emerged. She'd been planning this for months, slowly replacing my medication, gaslighting me into thinking my worsening condition was normal. Through it all, the headaches persisted. My doctor switched me to a different medication, one that came in a distinctively shaped pill that couldn't be easily replicated. Slowly, things began to improve. As I sat in the courthouse, watching Karen being led away in handcuffs after her sentencing, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, certainly. Anger, still. But also a profound sadness. How had someone I once loved turned into this person capable of such calculated cruelty? Mike squeezed my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I am. Or I will be." As we left the courthouse, stepping into the bright sunlight, I realized my head didn't hurt. For the first time in months, I felt clear, unburdened. The pain that had been my constant companion was gone, and not just a physical pain. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. "Hey, Mike," I said. "Want to grab a coffee?" He grinned. "Thought you'd never ask." As we walked down the street, I found myself noticing things I hadn't in months. The warmth of the sun on my face, the laughter of children in a nearby park, the smell of fresh bread from a bakery we passed. Small things, ordinary things, but they felt like miracles after so long living under a cloud of pain and fear. I realized then that while Karen had tried to poison my body, she'd also nearly poisoned my spirit, my ability to trust, to find joy in simple moments. But she had failed. I was still here, still moving forward. The headaches might return. The trauma of what I'd been through wouldn't disappear overnight. But I knew now that I was stronger than any pill, any poison. And with friends like Mike by my side, I could face whatever came next. As we settled into a table at the coffee shop, the bitter aroma of espresso filling the air, I smiled. It wasn't the euphoric absence of pain I'd once chased with those pills. It was something better, something real. It was the simple, profound joy of being alive, of having survived. And no prescription in the world could match that feeling. The call came at 2:17 a.m. In that groggy space between sleep and wakefulness, I answered, my heart already racing before I even heard the news. Nothing good ever comes from a middle-of-the-night phone call. Is this Lisa Chambers? The voice was clinical, detached. Yes, this is she. I managed, sitting up in bed, fully awake now. This is Mercy General Hospital. I'm afraid there's been an accident. Your parents, Robert and Ellen Chambers, have been brought in. It's serious. You should come right away. The world tilted on its axis. I don't remember hanging up or getting dressed. The next thing I knew, I was in my car, hands shaking as I tried to fit the key into the ignition. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Streets I'd known my whole life suddenly seemed foreign. Every red light an eternity. My mind raced with possibilities. What kind of accident? How bad was it? Why were they even out so late? I pulled into the hospital parking lot, tires screeching as I took the turn too fast. The emergency room entrance loomed before me, its harsh fluorescent lights a beacon in the dark night. I burst through the doors, out of breath. My parents. I gasped at the receptionist, Robert and Ellen Chambers. They were brought in. An accident? The woman behind the desk looked confused. She typed something into her computer, then frowned. I'm sorry, but we don't have any patients by those names admitted tonight. I blinked. Sure, I'd heard wrong. That's impossible. I got a call. They said it was serious, that I needed to come right away. She shook her head. I'm sorry, but there's no record of a Robert or Ellen Chambers being brought in. Are you sure it was this hospital that called? Yes. Mercy General. The woman said Mercy General. My voice was rising, drawing looks from the few other people in the waiting room. The receptionist's frown deepened. Ma'am, please calm down. Let me check with the ER staff. Maybe there was a mix-up with the names. As she picked up the phone, I paced a small waiting area, my mind whirling. Had I imagined the call? No, it had been so real, so specific. After what felt like hours but was probably only a few minutes, the receptionist waved me over. I've checked with all departments. We have no patients matching your parents' names or descriptions. We also haven't had any major accidents brought in tonight. I'm sorry, but I think there's been some mistake. I stood there, stunned. But the call... She gave me a sympathetic look. Sometimes people get confused, especially when woken up suddenly. Maybe you should go home and double-check with your parents. I'm sure they're fine. I nodded numbly and walked out, my legs feeling like lead. In the parking lot, I leaned against my car, trying to make sense of what had happened. Had it all been a dream? Some kind of stress-induced hallucination? I pulled out my phone to call my parents' house, then hesitated. If it was all a mistake, I'd just wake them up and worry them for nothing. Better to drive over and check on them myself. The drive to my childhood home was surreal. The familiar streets now seemed ominous in the pre-dawn darkness. As I turned onto their quiet suburban street, I half expected to see police cars or an ambulance. But everything was still, peaceful. I parked in the driveway and approached the front door. My hand shook as I used my key to let myself in. The house was dark and quiet. Mom? Dad? I called out softly, not wanting to startle them if they were asleep. No answer. I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding. Their bedroom door was closed. I knocked gently, then a little harder when there was no response. Finally, I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The bed was empty, perfectly made, like no one had slept in it. A chill ran down my spine. Where were they? Had there been an accident after all? I was about to turn and run back to my car, to drive to every hospital in the city if I had to, when I heard it. A soft scraping sound from downstairs. Hello. I called out, my voice trembling. Mom? Dad? Is that you? Silence. Then footsteps. Coming up the stairs. My heart was in my throat. I looked around wildly for something to use as a weapon, settling on a heavy crystal vase from my mother's dresser. The footsteps grew closer. A shadow appeared in the doorway. Lisa? I nearly dropped the vase in shock. It was my ex-boyfriend, Tom. What the hell are you doing here? I demanded, fear giving way to anger. Tom held up his hands placatingly. Lisa, calm down. I can explain everything. Explain what? Where are my parents? Did you have something to do with that call? He nodded slowly. I made the call. Your parents are fine. They're at your Aunt Susan's for the weekend, remember? You told me that last week. The memory hit me like a ton of bricks. I had told him that before I broke up with him 3 days ago. But why? I don't understand, I said, lowering the vase but not putting it down. Why would you do this? Tom's face crumpled. I just needed to see you, to talk to you. You wouldn't answer my calls, my texts. I thought if I could just explain. So, you made me think my parents were dying. The anger was back, white-hot and overwhelming. I'm sorry, he said, and he did look genuinely remorseful. I didn't think it through. I miss you so much, Lisa. These past few days have been hell. I shook my head, disbelieving. You're insane. You need to leave. Now. Please, just hear me out, he pleaded, taking a step towards me. I raised the vase again. Don't come any closer. I mean it, Tom. Get out, or I'm calling the police. Something changed in his eyes then. The remorse vanished, replaced by something cold and hard. You won't do that. Try me, I said, but my voice wavered. He smiled, but it wasn't the warm smile I'd once loved. This was something else, something that made my blood run cold. You won't, he repeated, because I have this. He pulled something from his pocket. In the dim light, I couldn't make it out at first. Then I realized it was my phone. You left it in your car, he explained, almost conversationally. Careless, really, but useful. See, while you were running around the hospital, I took the liberty of sending some interesting messages to your boss, your friends, that guy Mike you've been getting close to lately. My mind raced, trying to imagine what he could have sent. Given his current state, I doubted it was anything good. What do you want, Tom? I asked, hating the tremor in my voice. What I've always wanted. You. Us. Together. He took another step forward. We were good together, Lisa. We can be again. Just give us another chance. I gripped the vase tighter, weighing my options. I could try to overpower him. But Tom had always been stronger than me. I could scream, but the neighbors' houses were far enough away that I doubted anyone would hear. Okay, I said slowly, buying time. Okay, let's talk, but not here. Let's go downstairs. Tom's face lit up. Really? You mean it? I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, you're right. We should talk. Come on. I gestured for him to go first, and thankfully he did. As we descended the stairs, my mind raced. The back door was just off the kitchen. If I could get there first, we reached the bottom of the stairs. Tom turned towards the living room, but I headed for the kitchen. Let me just get some water, I said. I'll get it, Tom said quickly, moving to block my path. In that moment, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I swung the vase with all my might, catching Tom on the side of the head. He went down hard, my phone clattering to the floor beside him. I snatched up the phone and ran for the back door, fumbling with the lock. Behind me, I could hear Tom groaning, starting to get up. Finally, the door opened. I burst out into the cool night air, running across the backyard towards a gate that led to the street. I could hear Tom shouting behind me, his heavy footsteps giving chase. I reached my car, hands shaking as I tried to unlock it. Just as I got the door open, Tom caught up, grabbing my arm. "Lisa, please," he panted. "Don't do this. We belong together." I looked into his eyes, seeing the desperation, the instability. In that moment, I felt a complex mix of emotions, fear, certainly, but also pity and a profound sadness for what our relationship had become. "No, Tom," I said firmly. "We don't. What you did tonight, it's over. Really over. If you ever come near me or my family again, I will call the police. Do you understand?" For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then, slowly, he released my arm and stepped back. I got into my car, locked the doors, and drove away. In my rear-view mirror, I could see Tom standing in the street, watching me go. I didn't know if this was really the end, if he would respect my wishes, or if this was just the beginning of a longer nightmare. As I drove through the quiet pre-dawn streets, I felt a complex mix of emotions washing over me. Relief at having escaped, fear of what Tom might do next, and a deep, aching sadness for the person I'd once loved and the future we'd once imagined together. I knew I had a long road ahead, changing locks, possibly getting a restraining order, explaining to friends and family what had happened. But as the first rays of sunlight began to peek over the horizon, I felt a glimmer of hope. I'd survived this night. I'd face my fear and come out the other side. Whatever came next, I knew I was strong enough to handle it. And the first thing I was going to do was call my parents and tell them how much I loved them. After all, you never know when a middle-of-the-night phone call might be real. The first package arrived on a Tuesday. Innocent enough, a small, brown box left on my doorstep. No return address. Just my name scrawled in unfamiliar handwriting. I should have known then that something was off, but curiosity got the better of me. I never imagined that opening that box would be the first step down a twisted path of fear and paranoia. I remember standing in my kitchen, scissors in hand, slicing through the packing tape. The box contained a single item, a small porcelain doll with blonde hair and blue eyes. It looked antique, valuable even, but something about its fixed smile sent a chill down my spine. I turned it over in my hands, searching for a note, a clue, anything to explain its presence. That's when I noticed a tiny inscription on the bottom of the doll's foot. "Remember our first date?" My blood ran cold. Our first date. Jack had won me a similar doll at the county fair 5 years ago. I'd left it behind when I moved out, along with everything else that reminded me of him. I thought that chapter of my life was closed. Clearly, I was wrong. I set the doll on the counter, my hands shaking slightly. It was probably just a coincidence, right? Maybe an old friend playing a prank. But deep down, I knew better. Jack had found me. The next day, I almost didn't check the mail. Part of me wanted to pretend everything was normal, that the doll was a one-off oddity. But there was another package, slightly larger this time. Inside was a framed photograph. My stomach lurched as I recognized the image, Jack and me, smiling on the beach during our vacation in Florida. I deleted all my copies of this photo. Seeing it now, preserved and framed like a cherished memory, made me feel sick. Taped to the back of the frame was a note. "We were so happy then. What changed?" I sank to the floor, the frame clutched to my chest. Memories I'd tried so hard to suppress came flooding back. The way Jack's temper would flare without warning. The constant accusations. The need to know where I was every minute of every day. The way he'd apologize afterward, swearing it would never happen again. Until it did, I'd left in the middle of the night. Terrified but determined. I'd moved to a new city, changed my number, even started going by my middle name. I'd thought I was safe. I'd thought I was free. The packages kept coming. Each one contained some memento from our relationship. The playlist from our first road trip, pressed flowers from the bouquet he'd given me on our anniversary, a spare key to his apartment that I'd forgotten I had. With each delivery, the messages grew more intense. "I've changed, Olivia. Give me another chance. We belong together. You know that. I won't let you go again. I stopped opening the packages after a while, but they kept piling up on my doorstep. I'd come home from work to find 3, 4, sometimes 5 boxes waiting for me. The sight of them made my stomach churn. I tried going to the police, but without any explicit threats. They said there wasn't much they could do. I installed a security system, changed the locks, even talked to my landlord about moving. But the packages kept coming. Weeks turned into months. I became a shell of myself, jumping at every sound, scrutinizing every stranger on the street. Was that Jack across the coffee shop? Did I just see his car drive by? The constant fear was exhausting. My friends noticed a change in me. "Olivia, what's going on?" My best friend, Sarah, asked one day over lunch. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks." I broke down then, telling her everything. The packages, the messages, the paralyzing fear that had become my constant companion. Sarah listened, her face growing more concerned with each word. When I finished, she squeezed my hand. "You can't keep living like this, Liv. We need to do something." That night, Sarah helped me gather all the unopened packages. We took them to her brother, a lawyer who specialized in stalking cases. He listened to my story, examined the packages, and nodded grimly. "This is serious, Olivia," he said. "But we can fight this. We'll file for a restraining order, work with the police to track the packages. You don't have to face this alone anymore." For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this nightmare could end. But Jack had other plans. The next package arrived a week later, larger than the others, heavier. I almost didn't open it, but something told me I needed to see what was inside. The box contained a wedding dress. My wedding dress. The one I'd picked out during that brief, blissful period when I thought Jack and I had a future together. Before I'd seen his true colors, pinned to the dress was a note. "Wear this. Meet me at the park where I proposed. Tomorrow at sunset, or I start sending packages to your parents." My hands trembled as I read the note again and again. How did he know where my parents lived? What would he send them? The thought of my family being dragged into this mess made me feel physically ill. I called Sarah immediately. "He's escalating," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't know what to do." Sarah arrived within the hour, bringing her brother with her. We sat around my kitchen table, the wedding dress laid out before us like some twisted centerpiece. "You can't meet him," Sarah's brother said firmly. "It's too dangerous. We'll call the police, have them waiting at the park." But I knew Jack. If he suspected a trap, who knew what he might do? To me, to my family, to anyone who got in his way. "I have to go," I said quietly. "But I won't go alone." The plan came together quickly. Sarah would accompany me, disguised as a jogger. Her brother would be nearby in his car, ready to intervene. We'd alert the police, have them waiting out of sight. As the sun began to set the next day, I stood at the edge of the park, heart pounding. The wedding dress felt like a straitjacket, constricting my breathing. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to get as far away as possible. But I stood my ground. I was done running, done hiding. It was time to face Jack, to end this once and for all. I saw him before he saw me. He was sitting on a bench, a bouquet of roses in his hand. For a moment, he looked like the man I'd fallen in love with years ago. Then he turned, his eyes meeting mine, and I saw the obsession, the possessiveness that had driven me away. "Olivia," he breathed, standing up. "You came. I knew you would." I forced myself to walk towards him, every step an effort. "Hello, Jack." He held out the roses. "You look beautiful, just like I remembered." I didn't take the flowers. "Why are you doing this, Jack? The packages, the threats, it has to stop." His face darkened. "Stop? But I'm just getting started. Don't you see, Olivia? This is our second chance. We can start over, do things right this time." I shook my head. "There is no we, Jack. Not anymore. I've moved on. You need to do the same. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in painfully. You don't mean that. You're confused, but I can help you remember how good we were together. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. Let go of me, Jack. Never, he hissed. I'll never let you go again. Suddenly, Sarah was there, her disguise abandoned. She said, let go. Jack's eyes widened in surprise, his grip loosening just enough for me to wrench my arm free. I stumbled backward as Sarah placed herself between us. This doesn't concern you, Jack snarled at her. Like hell it doesn't, Sarah shot back. Olivia is my friend, and you're hurting her. It's over, Jack. The police are on their way. For a moment, Jack looked like he might lunge at us. Then the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. The fight seemed to drain out of him. Olivia, please, he said, his voice breaking. Don't do this. I love you. I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. If you ever love me, Jack, you'll let me go. For good this time. As the police cars pulled up, lights flashing, I saw something change in Jack's eyes. Resignation, maybe, or the realization that he'd finally pushed too far. He didn't resist as the officers approached, didn't say a word as they led him away. I watched the patrol car drive off, a complex mix of emotions swirling inside me. Relief, certainly, but also sadness for the man Jack used to be, and for the relationship I'd once thought would last forever. Sarah put her arm around me. It's over, Liv. You're safe now. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. It would take time to feel truly safe again, to stop looking over my shoulder or dreading the sound of the mail truck. But for the first time in months, I could breathe. As we walked out of the park, leaving behind the roses Jack had brought, I made a silent promise to myself. No more letting fear control my life. No more letting the past dictate my future. It was time to reclaim my story, to write my own happy ending. And step one was getting out of this damn wedding dress.